Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. I am Vishal Dahiya, and this week in Security Scan we'll talk about the Air Defence Command. In one of the first decisions after taking over as the first Chief of Defence Staff, General Bipin Rawat has issued directions to prepare a roadmap by 30th of June this year to create an Air Defence Command. As of now, the Air Defence Command is distributed between all three forces, with each service having their individual air defence setup. Indian Army, Navy and Air Force have 17 commands amongst themselves, in addition to two tri-services commands, that's the Strategic Forces Command and the Andaman and Nicobar Command. So to understand more about the Air Defence Command and how will it fructify and what benefits will it bring in, we have with us a distinguished panel of guests today in the studio. Let me first introduce the guests to you, beginning with retired Air Commodore Prashant, Dikshit, our defence expert today. We also have with us retired Lieutenant General Dr. V.K. Saxena, distinguished fellow from VIF. And we are joined by Mr. Manu, Pubby, the senior editor of Economic Times. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us here in the studios. Let me begin with you, Air Commodore Dikshit, and let's try and put the entire concept of air defence first in perspective.
At the outset, let me say I'm intrigued and baffled to some extent as to why was it necessary to start the process of theaterization with the Air Defence Command. Do we have a notion as to what kind of theatres will come and what kind of themes?
Okay.
It could be either geographical or it could be like what you do, as a group activity. Things are not very clear, and in the midst of it, one hears about the Air Defence Command. I started scratching my head to say, what's wrong with the current pressure of working? You described some of it. But let me take a very positive attitude. Air Defence Command, if it's going to get all the ingredients of an air defense process together, that will be helpful. And when I say that, I mean all the surface to air weapon system gathering at any incursion into India are being neutralized by a laid down policy and effective control. To illustrate, if there are Eagle missiles being used in army formations, so when they fire, is there a method to control when they do that? Or are we aware of it? That's one point.
Okay.
Is the objective to bring the S-400 also into the ambit so that we have a better managed system? How are we going to get into drone controls? Is civil aviation be brought into under control? The maximum aviation activity in the country takes place by civil aviation. The Indian Air Force is a small rung managing the airspace. Till now, the responsibility of defense of the country's airspace is with the Indian Air Force. Now, what happens to the Space Command looming in the future? I believe it was said that it's going to be an Aerospace Command currently functioning under a two-star person. So what are the notions of future?
Okay.
And why have we suddenly gone into doing the Air Defence Command? Some more needs to be understood.
Okay, so a bit more of clarity out there, and a more focus on integration. That's what Air Commodore Dikshit is saying, if it has to be successful with the objectives. Let me bring in General Saxena here. General Saxena, let's begin with the points raised by Air Commodore Dikshit. One, why straight away go in for the Air Defence Command at first go? And two, how to ensure that the main objective, which is to bring in better integration between all three forces, can be achieved by having one Air Defence Command?
Starting with the Air Defence Command, which has deserved the first priority of the newly appointed CDS, in which, as you just now mentioned, you asked for a proposal by 30th June, I believe we have to understand it very clearly. Now, Air Defence Command per se is meant to integrate, cumulate the air defense resources of the three verticals of the Army, Navy and the Air Force. But at the same time, the uniqueness of each service and its specific core competency in executing air defense in its typical battle space is to be retained as a vertical. Now, let me explain this further. Why air defenses exist in the country? Air defenses, whether it is land, sea or air, exist in the country to negate or counter the enemy's air threat. What is air threat? The potential of the adversary to cause damage and destruction on our vulnerabilities through the medium of air threat vehicles and munitions, be it on land, sea and air, in furtherance of its war effort.
Okay.
This is the basic Now, if that be the basic reason, then when enemy is prosecuting this air threat from his air threat vehicle, he does not see the service boundaries, Army, Navy, Air Force, land, sea and air. He causes damage and destruction across board. Now, if that damage and destruction is caused by the adversary across board, very thoughtfully, every service has got its own typical air defense weapons which are particularly suited to its own battle space. Take the case of the Army. Now, Army, take the case of tactical battle area where Army is responsible to protect its mechanized forces, field force and so on. It has got weapons suitable to protect this like Tankushka, like Strela, like Osa, etc. Now, talk of Navy. Navy has got platforms in land, sea and air. Go and visit any ship, you will find tremendous amount of air defense. Talk of the Air Force. They got every sort of missiles, aircrafts and everything. Now, what is all this all about? All this is the uniqueness of each service. But at the same time, as you just now mentioned, let me just put it a point of clarity that it is very unambiguous in the Union War Book that the responsibility of the air defense of the national airspace is that of the Indian Air Force. But the execution of this air defense function in the core competency of each service is dependent on the type of threat they are facing. Like suppose in the air defense, in the tactical battle area, IBGs are now proceeding ahead across the battle force. Now, they require their integral weapons to take on the opportunity targets because integral to them. So, it is like the Trishul of Lord Shiva. What is Trishul of Lord Shiva has got 3 arms. Each arm has got a capability to kill anybody. Individual kill capability, but all 3 arms are welded or cast in one weapon with a cumulative kill capability. So, Air Defense Command is to be understood very peculiarly that it has got connotations on responsibility of air defense, on command and control of air defense, on other things. But at the same time, 2 things have to be ensured. What are those 2 things? The uniqueness of each service, and secondly, the core competency of each service specific weapons to operate in its typical battle space, like Army in tactical battle area, Navy in fleet at sea, Air Force in air and ground. Has to be retained. So these are this is a very delicate thing to be understood. It's not very simple to understand. Everybody say, everybody turf. No turf. It's very clear. Responsibility is clear. Everything is clear. But this uniqueness needs to be maintained.
So what you're saying is that it will be an inclusive command, but will not take away the exclusivity or the uniqueness of all 3 forces. And specifically here, when we talk about air defense, then we are looking at the Indian Air Force only. And bring in Manu here. Manu, this was the main responsibility which was entrusted to the CDS when the post was created. That is to integrate the resources in a manner so that they can be utilized in a very optimum fashion, and also to ensure better coordination between all 3 forces. Now, one is that Air Defense Command, does it serve that purpose? And second is, as Commodore Dikshit pointed out, why begin with Air Defense Command only?
No, it's very interesting that they began with Air Defense Command, and it is perhaps the most complex thing to begin with if you see it at first, but then you realize that it is a good model to follow to formulate commands later, because air defense assets, as was pointed out earlier, have been invested in all 3 services. So, the process of consultation to set up commands can start off with a pilot project in which all 3 services are stakeholders. And as you said, optimization of resources. I think the CDS's function is not just that. His function is optimization of resources allocation, also procurement, because that is important, and thirdly, better command and control, faster response. So, air defense, unfortunately till now, while for example, Air Force and Army, they operate in similar environments in the same geographic area, but their air defense systems and weapons can be different. And that has created a lot of problems. For example, if the Army is looking for a close-in weapon systems to defend its airfield, it will start a different procurement process. The Air Force will start a different one. But why not get all of them together on the same platform? And that's where we were lacking. So we have in our system Russian systems, we have indigenous air defense systems, we have Israeli systems, and each service had its own philosophy. So that leads at several points at redundancies, at excess spending, which is not required. So I think if the CDS takes this as a challenge, firstly, it can save money, by ensuring that services have the same weapon systems, which can have better scale value. Secondly, you can have better coordination, faster responses, and you also bring the best of each service when you do such a thing. For example, the best technology available right now for command and control is with the Air Force. They have the ISCCS. It's the backbone of their command and control system. It's a software basically which gives the Air Force eyes and ears on everything which is happening. The Army lacks this thing. So if this central command is made, you can have the best of what each service brings. For example, the Army can bring that they have really good forward observers who can track, who's coming in. The Air Force can bring their technology. The Navy can bring something else, maybe satellite capabilities. So this gives a unique opportunity to get the best of all three together and move ahead.
Okay. One more interesting aspect here, and added one here, is since General Saxena used a particular term here, the turf war aspect. Can this also serve at that purpose of bringing an end to that turf war between all three forces? And we can't wish away this particular term. We've seen it always, although there will be a denial from the forces specifically per se, but then there have been cases.
No, I see. Turf war arises because you are used to certain thing, right? So, for example, the Air Force is used to operating, say, fighter jets, and if somebody tries to take it away, they will have a problem with it. So, there will be elements of turf war. There is no doubt about that, because each service, they have been trained. They have trained manpower. They have philosophies over generations which they hone in. And when they see that an attempt to take that away, for example, I would be very surprised if the Air Force is not, made in charge of this Air Defence Command, because the whole training of an Air Force officer for 30-40 years goes towards that. So yes, the possibility of turf wars remain, but I think that if we are looking at Air Defence Command only as one part, then, but if you're looking at the larger thing that is in mind, and I think General Rawat's point is to have theatre commands and other commands in the next 3 years, then this will this will be negated by some other thing. So you will have a balance perhaps at the end of the 3 years that we are looking at.
Okay, so it might look incomplete as of now, because we're just beginning with this and the proposal is yet to be prepared. It's just an idea which is there. But Commodore Dikshit, on the turf war aspect, because obviously, as Manu pointed out and as General Saxena was also saying, that all three forces are trained in their specific manner, have their own unique capabilities and way of functioning, and weapon systems as well. So it's but natural to have that aspect. But the integration is the overall objective here.
Very true. But Vishal, let me clarify. With the very excellent functioning of the integrated staff, which has been working for the last 5 to 7 years, a lot of procurement processes are rationalized. I gave you an example. The shoulder-fired weapons used by Army, Navy, Air Force are same. Igla. Igla is our Stinger. Now, similarly, weapon systems are common. But what the problems arise when there is autonomous operation. Or, for example, I'm only talking of peacetime. We are not going into when the battles is on. In peacetime, the management becomes complex. I give you an example. Near Pathankot, those drones brought in and dropped rifles. We read in the newspapers. How did that happen? How did it not get detected? So I presume there is some failure which took place over there. Now, those ends need to be tied up.
Okay.
The best way to tie it up is to bring everybody in the ambit, but not by disturbing the current structure. Now, mind you, you talked about the tough battles. The services have fallen in line. They have shown that. We didn't have to follow the American model of, passing a law to get people to work together. Even there, the Marines wouldn't fall in line. But in India, we have fallen in line. We have understood values.
It's a very disciplined force.
Oh yes, not only that, we understand. And we have groomed our military leadership together. So there is a greater understanding of each other's work. Although in their private life they may offer comments, we ought not to take any cognizance of that. One more point which I want to add to that, I sometimes feel that we are trying to follow an American model. The American NORAD, where the America and US and Canada joined up together to look at the space and incursion of weapon systems, which is a likely case in our case as well. Similarly, the formation of the Air Defence Command initially in US.
Okay.
So there is perhaps a belief to go in that way. But I am only skeptical of one particular aspect, and that is the developmental process which have taken place may go the wayward way. Air Force has developed the AFNET and Manu just described a little other system which is there.
Okay.
So those have to be retained. Mind you, wherever there is aviation taking place, in whatever uniform and place and things like that, that should be brought into some kind of a control of the Air Defence Command. That is what is needed.
Okay.
And the model, I give you example of drones, civil aviation similarly. One more point I think is appropriate to make now. What will happen in the battlefield take place, the management of air defense?
Okay.
Will it fall under the ambit of Air Defence Command? I don't see that happening as yet.
Okay. Now that's something, since the proposal is still being finalized, you know, that is why we have all these questions being asked as to how will it happen, what will happen, and what will be the structure. And that brings me to Jan Saxena. Jan Saxena, you know, again we're coming to the same moot theme. That is the integration aspect when we look at different weapon systems and different other systems which are functioning out there. But then if you look at the command and control structure as well, then if at all this proposal is being made, what are the options which we have, you know, which can be looked at in terms of having that structure in place so that all these aspects which Commodore Dikshit is pointing out are taken into consideration?
Sir, domain experts of air defense will tell you that Air Defence Command will set to rest many things without destroying or disturbing anything. Now take the case of control of air defense battle. Now the control of air defense battle, which is also called the air defense control and reporting system, is already a existing thing in the three services. Now as Manu was bringing out, this control of air defense or ADCRS is the lifeline of air defense battle. A weak control and reporting system, the best of air defense weapons will operate suboptimally. What does it mean? Now look at this, what I'm trying to say. This system is responsible for surveillance of the airspace, detection of the aerial objects, cancelling out the inputs from multiple radars so as to duplications are cancelled out, identification of those vehicles into friend or foe, prioritization of the air threat, selection of the most suitable weapon to take on the most threatened air threat vehicle, designation of the target in auto mode, successive shifting of fire from weapon to weapon, from aircraft to missiles to guns in a seamless manner, and control of the air defense battle, minute to minute control. Now all this is air defense control and reporting system. Today, the Indian Air Force, as a part of the three services, has got an integrated command and control system. But that does not end here. It rides on the FNet, Air Force Net. It has a national level command control linkages from the national command post right down to the weapon system. But it is not all alone. There is Army has got its air defense control and reporting system. It's got Akash Tir. Navy has got its air defense control reporting system called Trigun. Now the integration, what will be the first gain of air defense command?
All these three systems will have to be integrated.
Today, what is happening? These things are standing alone. Integration is taking place, but there are voids, serious voids in handshake, in perfect handshake. Air Defence Command will be first responsibility is to wipe out that voids and this and shape it properly.
Okay.
Now, number one, this does not end here. Now, what drives air defense? What drives air defense is air threat, as I told in the beginning. Today, the air threat is being determined by a number of agencies. These are classified. I don't want to mention them here. A number of inputtings, and some air threat is created at the level of National Security Secretariat and Dahiya and so on. When the Air Defence Command comes in, its net assessment cell or the air threat vertical or air threat cell will ensure that this particular entity which drives the complete air defenses of Army, Navy, Air Force and the nation is kept updated on a 24/7 basis, and it draws input from that.
Okay.
Third, very important point to be understood, only the domain experts can, who have experienced it. Now, how does this air threat defense of this country work? We identify vulnerabilities of the nation. How it is identified today? Again, it is in a classified manner. There is some method in madness in which each service identifies its own verticals, vulnerabilities, Army, Navy, Air Force, national strategic assets, rear area, so on. Today, it has got service orientation. What service? Army assets, Navy assets, Air Force assets, national strategic assets, and then so many assets to be protected, therefore so many air defense resources required, therefore this is the priority, and that is how the air defense cycle rolls. Now, this Air Defense Command if properly handled, will take away the service perspective to a national perspective. So what they will say, all right, your perspectives here, this perspective and this perspective here, but the national perspective is this. Thirdly, very important point again, the core competency of each service decides what weapon it holds, what weapon it will hold in future. Now, once you say these are the vulnerabilities, these are the type of weapons which you will hold tomorrow. Okay. And if this is the vulnerability, you hold this weapon, and so I think I can better manage it.
Okay.
Doesn't stop here. Doesn't stop here. Now, what happens about the training portion? Integration. We have our training establishment, our Army Air Defense College is the #1 training establishment of our country. Now, the three services can optimize their training to a very large extent. This is the top of the job of the Air Defense Command, to optimize the training value, or by optimizing the training hours of each simulator, each component, each course, each everything, and give a service instead of Army, Navy, Air Force identity, a national identity to air defense.
Okay.
This is what is the source and essence of air defense.
Okay. So General Saxena has put it out very, aptly out there. It's like, it's a much larger ambit than just the operational part. Manu, if we look at this way, and when you, responded to the first question, you spoke about how the long-term plan might be, and when all these things fall in place, all the plans about these commands, maybe things will look a little more clear, and when the proposal is ready for the Air Defense Command, we'll get to know as to how these questions are answered in terms of the integration, in terms of protecting the uniqueness of all the services.
Exactly. I mean, it's like you say, it's a start. It's the first, beginning of it. And the way it progresses, I think it will be an inclusive process. Thankfully, the creation of a CDS post will enable bringing all military inputs together, and it will be a collegiate decision. I don't think that we will proceed at a level in which one service is totally against. I think there will be gives and takes. And the other reason why this Air Defense Command is interesting to start off with is that it has linkages with every other command we have, and including the existing one. For example, like you said, the two commands we have is Andaman, Nicobar and the Strategic Forces Command. Air Defense Command is intrinsically linked to your SFC, because at the highest threshold of its responsibility, the Air Defense Command has to protect India against a nuclear missile strike, and it will have those assets. We are looking at a BMD and a ballistic missile defense system coming up, which I presume will go to this. So this is a command which will be set up from the very lowest of threats, which is say a drone dropping weapons, to the very highest of threats, which is a nuclear weapon. Overarching thing. So that's why I think linkages between all these commands we will see at more clearly in 3 to 4 years when it all comes through, but they will all be linked to each other, and these differences I think will get sorted out, and I don't see the possibility of one service taking great affront on, or declining to go ahead with this. I think it will be a collegiate decision in the end.
Okay, thank you so much, Manu, out there, and thank you, Air Commodore Dikshit and General Saxena as well. So there it is, as our panelists have pointed out. In a nutshell, first step has been taken, while there are several questions which remain to be answered, but those are being planned. That is why proposition or a proposal is being developed, and the clear picture will emerge when we have more clear detail as to how the Air Defense Command will function. It will come up, and other such commands in future as well. We'll come back again next week with a different topic. Till then, keep watching Rajya Television.